Welcome to Mindshare TV, where we connect with education and innovation leaders who are shaping the future of learning. I'm your host, Robert Martellacci, here at the Mindshare Workspace in Air Mills Town Center in the great city of Mississauga. Today, we're joined by Dr. Janette Camacho for an important, timely conversation inspired by your recent blog post. We cannot protect students from AI by cutting them off from educational technology. The Post responds to New York City schools reported decision to pause new educational technology purchases while officials examine concerns surrounding artificial intelligence. Dr. Camacho argues that while schools must protect student privacy, establish clear AI guardrails, evaluate screen time, and ensure that technology has genuine educational value, pausing EdTech purchasing risks treating all educational technologies as though it were generative AI. Today, we'll explore how education leaders can balance innovation, student safety, responsible governance, and equitable access to powerful learning tools. Dr. Camacho, welcome to Mindshare TV. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Robert, for having me. I'm delighted to be here. And like you mentioned, this is such an important conversation because schools are being asked to do two things, right? They're asked to protect students from a very real risk and at the same time prepare them for the future. And unfortunately, that future comes with artificial intelligence and as well as the digital tools that they already currently have in place. So my concern is that when we respond to AI in a broad re- redistriction or an evaluational way, then educational
Right.
technology, we may, limit the access and we're not deepening the uniqueness and we're leaving educators without the tools that they're have been using since pre-COVID in order
Right.
to guide our students. So the answer is not reckless adoption, of course not, but it's also not fear and cost paralysis because at the end of the day is responsible pedagogy and first and then
Yeah.
governance.
Well said. And so, talk to me about what prompted the blog. Your blog opens with a strong statement pausing all educational technology purchases may appear cautious, but you believe it's a profound mistake. And I would agree totally with that. What concerned you most about the decision, and what motivated you to speak out? We were just recently at the International Cyber Tech and Education conference in Orlando, where you and I and others connected and shared and learned from each other. There was quite a vibe at the event around AI, and certainly I understand the cautionary note, but to paint a broad stroke brush isn't a solution.
Absolutely. And I'm looking at this from various perspectives, right? Not just from the edtech world, but I've had the opportunity of wearing many hats, from being in the classroom to being an administrator to running a tech department in a school and training students in AI in tech literacy, right? So what concerned me the most was not the desire to be careful because I strongly believe that schools should be very careful. They should protect our students' data, examine what the vendor's claims, and consider developmental appropriateness of some of the items that they're buying or purchasing. And of course, the whole issue now with addressing screen time and having to set clear AI guardrails. So I strongly believe that as an administrator, we need to look at all these things and and see all the data behind it and the concerns. But what concerns me is the possibility of treating all educational technology as though it presents the same risk as government AI, right? So as generative AI, because it's not all the same. So being in the classroom and utilizing softwares that help my students read, and now having those types of softwares being frozen because of concerns with artificial intelligence and with generative AI, I see the problem. I see the big picture and who's going to be
Sure.
at lost here, who's going to be getting the short end of the stick. So that is where I begin to lose the important, to lose importance in distinctions. And, if you think about it, a screen reader, a translator tool, a literacy platform, learning management systems, or even virtual science labs are not the same thing as an open-ended generative AI chatbot. So I spoke out
Right.
because, you know, the broad cost may appear protective, but it can also limit the very tools that help our students access learning. And responsible leadership requires more than just saying yes or no to technology. It
Right.
requires, asking which tools are safe and which are effective
Yeah.
and which are
Well,
appropriate.
right.
Yeah.
Well said. EdTech is not generative AI, and one of your central arguments is that EdTech is not synonymous with generative AI. And what is that distinction? Why is that distinction so important? And why do education leaders risk when they group accessibility tools, literacy platforms, digital libraries, and learning management systems all together with AI applications?
Yeah, so educational technology is a broad ecosystem, right? And
Right.
generative AI is just one little category within that ecosystem. So so we have to learn the distinction between both so that we can make the better choices as to what we're going to block off our students from actually having access to. So that distinction is essential because educational technology includes many kinds of different tools, like we had mentioned earlier, right? So some tools are going to support the accessibility of our students. Some help students translate language, practice reading. I'm trying to think of conduct simulations, organize assignments. Like now with tools like Notebook LM, you can organize your assignments. You are also collaborating with peers, receiving feedback. And generative AI is different because it can create content, simulate experiences, but it also influenced students' thinking and raising questions about authorship. We have raising questions about bias, about privacy, and about academic integrity. And when leaders group all these digital tools together, like I mentioned, they're kind of using a one-size-fit-all policy for every technology that can result in unnecessary restrictions on the tools that are, not sources of concern. So
Right. Well said. Uh, Governance without paralysis. Your support clear limits for AI, strong student data protections, and careful evaluation of every platform entering schools. How can school districts create responsible AI and edtech governance without allowing caution, fear, or lengthy approval processes that paralyzes innovation? I've adopted an agile mindset when it comes to implementing tools and technology. So you have to be somewhat flexible, but you need guardrails.
absolutely, and I always think it's use risk tiers and not blanket bans, right? So and when I started talking about artificial intelligence, that it was coming to the classroom and warning school districts about this is what the future is going to look. We need to prepare our teachers because our students are going to have access to it first and our teachers, and so it has been, right? So I think school systems need the government structure that protects them, but it's also practical, right? So one way to do that is through like maybe like a risk tier model. Not every tool needs the same level of review. You're not going to take your software that helps your students practice their math drills through the same review of a tool that's going to help them with their math tools that goes in and sees what they're missing and kind of like generates questions for them within the same, because they're two different tools. One is using artificial intelligence to see where they're having issues, and the other one is just the tools like drill tools, right? So I would recommend like clear approved tools list, transparent review process, pilot opportunities for educators. I think also educators, we're the best judges of what actually works in your classroom and what doesn't. And a lot of the time school districts adopt things and the teachers look at it and they're like, okay, we'll try it. But at the end of the
Right.
day, they don't end up lasting that long because you don't see you're using instructional time to use this tool that's not really functioning well for what your class needs. So high risk tools should receive deeper reviews around privacy, of course,
Right.
around security, around the bias, the transparency, and obviously the academic integrity, and developmental appropriateness, right? So you're not going to give a tool that you would give a high school student to an elementary school student.
Thank
And
you
I,
for, yeah.
yeah,
With that, the impact on teachers. Teachers are often asked to personalize learning, support diverse student needs, and prepare young people for an increasingly complex digital world. We ask a lot of teachers from teacher. What happens when educators are suddenly restricted from accessing new tools that could help them address learning gaps and language barriers, accessibility needs, and student engagement?
well, every tool should have to prove its instructional value and its trustworthiness, right? So if you're banning teachers from it, now I know that the latest thing on the news is, Topic just gave teachers free tier, and I think ChatGPT or also had is free tier for teachers as
Right,
well. So teachers are having access to the stuff, right?
right,
Now they're having access whether their school district wants it or not. So now, as an administrator, you have to think about what are going to be some of those liabilities around that, right? Are they logging into their free software on their computers? How are they utilizing? What kind of information they're having on there? So I think by voiding them all in general, you're still leaving open up questions out there of things that are still happening, even though you have that specific boycott, right? So a balanced evaluation framework begins with a purpose, right? So we have to, before asking whether a tool is existing or popular, I think school leaders need to ask, what instructional problem are we trying to solve, right? Does this tool help students learn more deeply,
right.
access content more effectively, and also like receive better feedback or allow teachers to use it within their time. We're not going to try to, right now, these tools are making teachers' lives so much easier, from communication purposes, from planning lessons. And by restricting it now, you're taking that flexibility from from our educators. So um, hopefully, I answered some of the questions
Yeah,
you.
no. Well said. Well said. Talk to me about equity and access. Could broad tech purchasing restrictions unintentionally deepen inequalities, inequities between well-resourced schools and students who depend on publicly funded technology for accessibility, translation, tutoring, or access to learning resources? Who is most likely to be affected by these policies? And what about the ed tech sector and companies themselves? Where does that put them in this situation that we're in?
Absolutely. So, I mean, two very distinct problems right there, right? So, number one, when you're looking at all the budget cuts that are happening and how it's impacting all those ed tech companies that have employees that are constantly writing curriculum, that are coding, that are putting these type of programs together, and now, because of the freezes, they're not being utilized. So that's a huge issue within itself. Now, as far as inequality, I mean, most of our private schools are not going to have those issues, right? And that's the students that get to have all those shiny toys. And I always point out that one of the things that unfortunately COVID brought to the table in education was the one-on-one.
Mhm.
Some of these classrooms, including my own, only had 5 computers, and it had to be circulated between all our students. And once COVID came into the picture, all those students received that one-on-one device, so they were able to catch up with things that a lot of the private schools had already for over 10 years, right? So now by you putting this particular freeze on purchasing anything ed tech, you're looking at, machines that need to be replaced because they're not working, licenses that need to be reviewed. So it's a whole trickling effect that's going to definitely, if it's not looked into soon before the school year starts, it's going to start having repercussions that are going to affect students throughout, this coming school year.
Definitely. And so let's talk about the path forward. What would you recommend to education jurisdictions, school boards, superintendents, and policymakers who are currently wrestling with concerns about AI? How can they protect students while still empowering teachers to be responsible, to evaluate, and to adopt technologies that improve learning?
So my advice would be to start with the students and the learning first, not with the fear of the tool. So policymakers should ask themselves, or ask the big questions: what do students need to learn? What do educators need in order to teach well, right? So what safeguards and what are non-negotiables, right? So I would first think of like 5 steps, right? First step being defined as a category clearly, like traditional EdTech, AI enabler tools, and generative AI are not all on the same scale, right? So second, created risk tiers. So higher risk tools receive deeper reviews. And third, establish a negotiable around privacy and transparency, like human oversight, accessibility, developmental appropriateness, and academic integrity definitely need to be within a specific tier of evaluation. And create a pilot, pathway that educators can test the tools before you put them out on the table. So before you say, hey, like I'm going to purchase from this company because it's pretty cool of what it does, like have the teachers actually test it and see what they actually think, and pilot it in the classroom to see if it's going to make a difference. And I think the fifth one is very important, and is invest in AI literacy for educators, students, and
Mm.
families and leaders. um, Policy without professional learning becomes a compliance, and that's key. So policy without learning becomes a culture. And the goal is not fast adoption. I believe the goal is wiser adoption. And I saw, and you know
I
I saw
love that. Well said.
Thank you. And I saw a TikTok, and as funny as it was a teacher, I'm not sure what school district, and he was complaining that his students created, a fake person of him and making fun of him and put it
Uh
out to
oh.
the world. So I'm like, and
So
this
so the teacher was being bullied.
the teacher was being bullied, and this was done by
Wow.
sixth graders, right? So
Oh
if
my goodness.
this is happening, and we definitely need to be able to teach our teachers of the kind of technology that's out there, and also start teaching our students about responsible technology. And by boycotting it, we're going away from teaching what should be right and wrong and what should be put out there. So responsible innovation is not just saying yes to everything, it's also knowing how to say yes, no, not yet, or only with the right safeguards.
Uh, Brilliantly said. Final thoughts, Dr. Camacho, to share.
Um, let's see. Hope comes from educators asking better questions. So, what gives me hope is that many educators are not just swallowing questions about AI. They are not simply asking, what can this tool do? They are also asking, how can it give learning a deeper meaning, right? Or how can I protect my students? And does this support equity for all the students that are out there? And does this prevent human judgment? I think everybody that's utilizing like the new features of coding or ChatGPT's new plan, and it's like, oh, I have to babysit my computer. I'm like, yes, that's called human in the loop. As hard as you don't like it, it's those companies making sure that they have that human judgment of, before you hit yes, go ahead and send all these emails out, that you're actually looking at what emails you're sending out. So AI is forcing us to return to some of the most important questions in education. And I think if you watch football, You've been seeing all the commercials from Anthropic also showcasing about, think responsibility, think asking the harder questions. So what is learning? What is authorship? What is meaningful feedback? What should students be able to do independently? Um, what should technology support and what should it remain deeply human? And I'm hopeful because educators understand that technology is not the center of education. Students are, teachers are, and relationships are, and human judgment is also should be at the center. And if we keep pedagogy first, ethics central, and equity at the heart of all the work, AI education and technology can just help us build more responsible and inclusive learning environments. And I think that's my final thought on it.
Well, grateful for your time today, Dr. Camacho. Brilliant perspective. Your article reminds us that responsible innovation requires much more than simply saying yes or no to technology. It requires thoughtful leadership, strong governance, clear standards, evidence-based decision-making, and meaningful input from educators, students, families, and technology partners representing the ecosystem. Before we close, what gives you the greatest hope about the future of educational technology and artificial intelligence in our schools?
Well, I was able to see that actually firsthand in ISTE, and and the kind of teachers that are bringing this to life. And one of the students that I got to see, number one, I saw like a couple of exhibitions, but one of them we stopped them in the hallway, we interviewed them, and it was students that actually, because of their teacher and utilizing AI, they were able to solve how to spot cancer earlier. And
Wow.
this is the kind of technology that, if used properly, is going to give this world a better hope of solving some of the greater problems. It's just how to teach.
And these were high school students.
These were high school students. Yes. Yes.
Remarkable.
Yes.
Remarkable.
I think the ISTE page has an article on them, and
Cool.
I got to interview them, and I was just like shivers. Like I looked at that teacher that was their sponsor, and I was like, "Thank you," because this is what we need,
And,
for the
and
future. So.
and that gives us hope for the future, most definitely. Dr. Janette Camacho, thank you for joining us on Mindshare TV and for helping advance this important and timely conversation. To our viewers and listeners, we'd love to hear your perspective. Can schools protect students from the risks of AI without cutting teachers and learners off from educational technology that supports accessibility, equity, and student success? And don't forget to join us at the 17th Canadian EdTech AI Summit, October 28th and 29th at the University of Toronto, Mississauga. You're all welcome to join us. Register before the end of the month and receive 30% off our early bird special offer. My name is Robert Merdlanchi, and until next time, stay healthy, stay safe, and keep the learning curve steep.